Welcome to the program. I'm Mitzi Borromeo. Our guest tonight caught the public eye for his prominent role in the uprisings against Gloria Macapagal Arroyo. He was detained for over 7 years for leading the infamous Oakwood Mutiny of 2003. Antonio Trillanes IV is the first Philippine senator to be elected while incarcerated. He ran an independent nationwide campaign on a shoestring budget from his prison cell. With over 11 million votes, he ranked 11th in the 2007 senatorial race and was re-elected for a second term in 2013. Senator Trillanes is not one to mince words. He was a staunch critic of Senate Minority Leader Juan Ponce Enrile.
I have lost trust, faith, and confidence in Senator Enrile's capability to lead the Senate along the path consistent with the reform agenda that I espouse.
He has an ongoing word war with Vice President Jejomar Binay.
Hindi siya mapagkakatiwalaan. It shows lack of character, untrustworthiness of the Vice President, and the lack of any intention to face the people regarding the allegations brought up against him.
He has expressed dismay on the confusion surrounding the recent Maguindanao clashes that killed 44 PNP staff members.
Friendly advice to Malacanang, konting sensitivity pa. Dapat nararamdaman nila yung nararamdaman nito mga pamilya, while at the same time having a clear and objective mind na dalhin itong bansa na to sa tamang landas.
Senator Trillanes, great to have you on the show.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening. Let's start out with the Maguindanao clashes. What are your thoughts on what has happened so far, on what actually happened there in Mamasapano and how it's been handled by government?
Well, first, my initial instinct was this is again another tragedy for the end time. We've had similar incidents wherein soldiers get slaughtered like this. So that's the initial instinct. But then I had to step back and wait for the information to come in. Because I believe right now there's so much speculation, so much knee-jerk reactions, and it's not doing the country any good. So I'm looking forward to our hearing in particular so that we can piece together the real picture of that incident.
You have said that you were puzzled as to why the police did not seek help from the military in pursuing the terrorists. So do you think that they did not follow protocol? Did they not organize this operation properly?
Well, again, let's make certain assumptions first. On the assumption that there was no coordination, and based on the statement of the SAF commander, he said it was his call. It was his judgment call not to coordinate that early so that the information will not leak out. So if that was the case, then the question for him is, if that was your plan and that's your call, who do you expect will reinforce your men should things go south? So that's one of the answers I would like to hear from the SAF commander. Well, as for the government's handling of this particular incident, well, admittedly, there are some lapses, particularly the absence of the president during the arrival honors for the slain policemen. But these are not unforgivable offenses. I believe the president made up for it by having a dialogue, a 12-hour dialogue with the relatives. I believe he displayed that he was really genuinely concerned about them. So he took time, half a day, just to hear them out, one by one. So I believe no president would even devote so much time for such an incident. So,
well, let's look at accountability. The question in everyone's minds is who is responsible for this? As the commander-in-chief, does the president hold responsibility? Should he admit to some kind of responsibility for this?
We can always say that the president is responsible for everything that happens in this country. Not only as commander-in-chief, but as president, he's responsible for the nation. But for this particular operations, assuming that he was the one who gave the go signal, was it a valid decision to make? I believe so, because they were after a global terrorist, and he was presented with a viable operation plan and credible intelligence about the mission. So he gave it a go, and they did. They were able to capture the uh, the global terrorists they were after,
Although
Marwan.
the DNA tests are still being done to check if Marwan is indeed.
Yes, there's that, but at least for now, it's not as if they didn't they were not able to show anything. At least they were able to show some pictures and a sample of the slain suspect.
So, would you say the 44 lives then are worth this life of the terrorist Marwan?
No, you can never say that. Uh, the life of a single soldier is valuable, that you cannot equate it with any particular mission. So the ideal situation is you accomplish the mission, you were able to achieve your objectives without having to lose a single life. So that's the ideal. But in this particular case, we're talking about the command responsibility. The president gave a signal for a legitimate military or law enforcement operation. So he's not supposed to be responsible for the screw ups later on.
Right. Well, let's talk about politics. Of course, it plays a big role here. We know that there are factions, and even between the military and the police. You having been part of the PMA, do you see politics playing into this?
Yes, the what they call the inter-service rivalries, it plays a lot in the success of military operations, not only between the AFP and PNP, but within the AFP. There are service rivalries as well between the Marines and the Army and the Navy SEAL. So these things happen, and that's the reason why you need to coordinate. You really need to be one in that operation, so you can have that sense of belongingness within a team. So that's the wisdom behind it. But then again, the decision has been made that this mission should be or this operation should be conducted by the SAF, and it was the call of the national leadership.
Do you think that the MILF can be trusted? Because some are saying, and many lawmakers are saying, that given the peace talks now, MILF did not observe or respect the ceasefire. So, for example, Senators Cayetano and Ejercito withdrew their co-authorship. Do you think that we should stop the peace process?
Okay, I'm not ready to go there yet without having seen the facts about this incident. Now, let's try to analyze this thing objectively. Prior to this incident, were there any clashes between the AFP at least and the MILF? There are no significant clashes. So up to that point, the peace talks were holding. The ceasefire agreement was holding. So if you're talking about trust, then there you go. Now, which leads us to this particular incident. Without having to ascertain what happened on the ground, we cannot go to that conclusion. But for the sake of this discussion, let's assume for a while that the MILF was treacherous in this particular incident, that they desecrated the dead. I believe those are deal breakers. And we can honestly say that we cannot possibly move forward with such an incident. But on the other hand, if what happened there is a legitimate military operation with a lack of coordination or lapses in communication or whatever, which may lead us to at least give the benefit of the doubt that the MILF wasn't treacherous at all, or even the bodies were not mutilated, then we can see things in a different light. We can look at the MILF in a different light. So, which is why I keep on stressing that the facts are very, very important. We have to wait for it.
Right. Well, given the facts, according to Senator Miriam Defensor Santiago, she says this should fall under the International Criminal Court because she said this massacre constitutes atrocities and therefore the punitive laws against war crimes apply. Do you agree?
I definitely disagree. With all due respect to Senator Miriam Defensor Santiago, but I think it's one of those knee-jerk comments, knee-jerk reactions that we're trying to avoid.
Right. So in terms of also how the media has handled it, I mean, of course, it was really a tragedy. Do you think that it's been treated fairly? I mean, everyone, of course, there's been a lot of flack on the president.
Well, it is what it is. The media is just being the media. They follow where the emotions are, where the news are, so it's not their fault. I believe, as I said earlier, there were lapses with the way Malacanang handled this thing early on. But now I believe they're trying to turn things around, and so far it's working.
All right. Well, we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk to Senator Trillanes about some of the controversies and biggest challenges he has faced in his political career. We'll be right back. On July 27, 2003, the Bagong Katipuneros, some 300 junior officers and soldiers from the elite corps of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, led by Army Captain Gerardo Gambala and Lieutenant Senior Grade Antonio Trillanes IV of the Philippine Navy, took over the Oakwood Premier Ayala Center in Makati. The dissident soldiers rose up against the corrupt administration of Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, demanding the resignation of senior officers in the AFP and members of the Arroyo government, including the president herself. When then Lieutenant Senior Grade Antonio F. Trillanes IV, also known as Class Marilag, made public their grievances against the government, they used the red armband with a sun emitting 16 rays. At the center of the sun is an alibata alphabet K, the insignia that appeared among the first flags of the Katipunan. The group was dubbed Magdalo by the press because of this insignia, the perceived flag of the Magdalo faction of the Katipunan during the Philippine Revolution. After 20 hours of negotiation, the Magdalo soldiers stood down and surrendered to their superiors. There was no bloodshed and not a single shot was ever fired. As one of the leaders of the failed Oakwood Mutiny, Trillanes was charged with coup d'etat and was incarcerated for almost 7.5 years. Welcome back to News Cafe. We are talking to Senator Antonio Trillanes IV. Senator, you once said that Gloria Macapagal Arroyo is the most corrupt president. Do you still believe that?
Yes, I believe so. And I believe that the statement has been validated by those cases filed and exposed later on after she went down.
So we'll talk about the Oakwood Mutiny. When that happened, I mean, what was that situation like? At the time, you were very young. So it started with the Oakwood Mutiny, and then it went on to the Manila Peninsula siege. You were actually, at the time, an ally of Vice President Binay. At the time, he was also very outspoken against Gloria Macapagal Arroyo at the time.
Yes. Back in 2003, I think I was a junior officer, and we were exchanging information and stories between my classmates from the different services in the AFP. And we were quite frustrated with the corruption, the amount of corruption that has been happening at that time. And later on, we found out about the information that some senior officers were involved in selling firearms and ammunition to the enemies of the state, and there were some covert operations being conducted against civilians to create a wag the dog scenario. So we couldn't accept that because we believe that's not why we were soldiers. So we protested that, and that's why we got detained for 7.5 years.
Do you regret any of that? Would you have done things differently?
No. I'm a fatalist. I believe things happen for a reason, and I had to be there at that time.
How did you end up becoming the spokesperson for the Oakwood Mutiny? Because I think at the time, no one was really sure what was going to happen, and then suddenly you were thrown into the picture.
A few days before that, we were discussing about these things, and since I had, um, I think, two research papers on corruption about the military, so my classmates figured that I would be in the best position to articulate our grievances. So
Right.
it's just like that.
Well, let's talk about again your relationship with Vice President Jejomar Binay. At the time, so the history of animosity goes back to 2007, right? But during the Manila Peninsula siege, you were both fighting the corruption against GMA. And you said he helped hatch the mutiny, but he abandoned it.
Yeah.
What
Well,
happened there?
I really thought we were fighting, both of us were fighting against the corruption during the Arroyo regime. But, well, apparently not so, not now. But back then, we were planning, we were coup plotters during that time. And we had roles to play. We committed, our group committed to be the starters of that rebellion, and his role was to provide the what they call the critical mass, or at least would start the massing of people through the civilian employees of the Makati government, the students of University of Makati, and the urban poor. At least that was his commitment. But when we went out, he was no longer there. He was nowhere to be found.
So sabi mo, sanay ka na dyan. Whenever now he doesn't show up, like the debate, you were
Yeah.
supposed to have a debate in November, he just didn't show up, sabi
Yeah.
mo.
So he's just like that. Hindi mo mapagkakatiwalaan. He cannot hold on to his word, and he chickens out. That's it.
So you said that if it weren't for the media present in Manila Peninsula, many would have been killed.
Yes,
that
yes.
right?
I actually thought we were the only ones left there, because we were situated in the room, the innermost room there, because it was set up as the operation center. So when the Marines that we were coordinating with, or who was supposed to be part of that activity, were no longer coming, then we decided to to pack up the whole thing. Then when we moved, just before we moved to the other room, the door opened abruptly, and a couple of reporters and cameramen stormed in, and they were crying because there were already tear gas being thrown in the passageways, and they said to please help them, protect them. So I was surprised that there were still other people around. Then that's the time we transferred to the bigger room, and that's where I saw the media men and some personalities, political personalities, still hold up there. So the media really saved the day for everyone, including myself.
You got your messages out. Did you ever feel at some point during these coups or the siege, like giving up? Because it's very scary. You don't know what's going to happen. I mean, what kept you going? To go through. And many of your men, people with you, said that seeing you standing there strong and just confident really meant a lot to them.
I would like to believe that we were led there for that specific mission. We had to get our messages out, and I believe the people needed to hear that. Now, what they will do about that information is better left unto them, and if they will just tolerate it, then so be it. And that's how we felt. And even during the Manila Pen incident, I remember we encountered the SAF. It was the SAF troopers who stormed in the Manila Pen. But prior to that, when they were just prepositioning, some of our own snipers were asking for a clearance to shoot them down because they were in their crosshairs. But I told them, we won't fire a shot, because I believe if we kill one of those SAF troopers, then we would lose any moral ascendancy for our cause.
Yeah.
So we made sure of it.
Why do you think, well, at the time, people, of course, were also very upset with the corruption going, but there wasn't a kind of, the kind of people uprising as we saw with maybe with the 1 million people march. What, did you feel that you lacked support from the public at the time?
No. Well, I won
Yes.
just a couple of months before. I won even when I was detained. So I believe what's this? The people were with us, were for us. But at that time, the GMA government has mastered uh, the tactics for demobilizing or preventing any accumulation of a critical mass for any uprising. So they crushed all formations of people. So they were good at it.
Yeah. Well, as you said, in 2007, you won the elections and you were the first senator to win in incarceration. How does one lead a government from prison? What was that like? What kept you, how do you make sure that you're in touch with the people?
We had this extensive network of supporters, and whereas the usual politician would just be reliant on the local leaders, we had this network all over the country through the soldiers, our members, our relatives, their relatives. So we were able to reach out to the far-flung areas of the country, and it did us well. We were able to tell the people indirectly our story and the need to continue the fight as a senator of the Republic.
So how did it feel when you came out in 2010? Finally, you could sit in the Senate. You had some adversaries. So what was it like? One of them being Senator Miriam Defensor Santiago. What was it like when you finally met her and she showed more respect for you?
Yes, I made sure that before the session started that January, I made sure that I paid a courtesy visit at her place. So I went there, and she was sick at the time, and I brought her flowers. And I asked for advice, being she's really one of the more brilliant senators around. So I asked for advice because I wanted to start on the right foot. So she willingly gave the advice, and I believe in a way it disarmed her, because probably she thought that I was this wild caveman yeah, that would just shout at people. No?
You swept her off your feet. She called you the handsomest legislator standing in the House. What do you have to say about that?
Well, whatever works, whatever works.
Okay.
So at least because of that, we became allies, and she became a sort of a mentor of mine. I consult her every now and then through our coordination with her office. Yeah.
Let's talk about Juan Ponce Enrile. Of course, you clashed a lot. Now, you called him abusive, and that you really worked for his removal from the Senate leadership. What happened? You were fighting over the China talks and Camarines Sur. He called you a fraud. He called you the Phantom of the Opera in Philippine politics.
Well, I believe the public can see through that, and I was in a way vindicated by the events that followed after. And I would like to remind everybody about the history of Senator Juan Ponce Enrile. And in fact, I was joking with Senator Bongbong Marcos, and I told him, if your father only had a good defense minister and not an abusive one like then Minister Enrile, then his father would have been one of the most loved presidents in the Philippine history. But sadly, he picked Senator Enrile, and he abused power. That's his tendency. Wherever you put him, he has a tendency to abuse power, whether for power's sake or for accumulation of money and wealth.
You accused him of gerrymandering and being a lackey of former President GMA. So do you think that, especially for pushing for the division of Camarines Sur. This is because it was supposed to benefit Gloria Macapagal Arroyo's kin. Isn't it,
Yes,
Camarines?
yes, and that was a request of President Arroyo to him personally, and it was witnessed by my source. So I was standing on very solid information that it was a political accommodation. So I can't accept that you just divide a province just because your ally said so. So what about the people there? I wanted to get the feel of the people, their position on the matter, and they don't like their province to be divided. So on a matter of policy, I said if we start dividing a province like Camarines Sur now, then who's to stop the division of all the other provinces like Cavite, Pangasinan, Laguna? Then we'll end up with 1,000 provinces on a whim, based on a whim.
Yeah. Now, when he resigned, you had a smile on your face, yet you insisted that he shouldn't be placed in an ordinary jail. Do you think that they deserve special treatment for people? I mean, of course, of his age, Senator Enrile, you said that by virtue of his advanced age, he deserves a facility where his medical needs will be attended to.
Yes, and it's not special treatment. It's how the state should treat very senior persons like Senator Enrile. They should provide a facility that can look out for their more sensitive health, and it applies to everyone. Even right now, that's how we treat senior citizens in detention facilities and in the jails.
All right, we'll take a quick break. When we return, we'll hear more interesting stories from Senator Trillanes. Welcome back to the show. We are getting into the mind of Senator Antonio Trillanes. Okay, Senator, let's talk about former Philippine Defense Secretary General Angelo Reyes. Now, in 2011, when he committed suicide, some people were pointing fingers at you because they said that you dressed him down during the 2011 hearing over the allegations. What do you have to say about that?
Of course, it's not true.
Yeah.
The publics have seen that particular episode, and for some who were not privy to the whole thing, in fact, prior to that, there were some exchanges. My classmate is an aide of the late General Reyes, and they were actually negotiating for his testimony. But I told him all he needs is to point upstairs if he believes that he's not responsible, but somebody is responsible. So, but he's not about to rat out on his former boss. So, and I told them, if that's the case, then you'll have to go down with her.
Yes.
So that's what happened. But during the hearing itself, during the early part of the hearing, I was actually the one being dressed down by the late General Reyes, because that's how we are in the PMA family. He's like an older or a kuya. Okay, so regardless of your positions right now or your seniority right now, he will always be a senior. So that's how we treated each other early on. But during the latter part of the hearing, when he wanted to cross-examine one of the witnesses, and the other senators were allowing it, I wasn't about to allow it. So I took off my PMAer hat for a while and put on my senator's hat and put him in his place. But later on, it was revealed that through some of the people close to General Reyes that he lapsed, or he was suffering some sort of depression after he went down from power in July 2010. So that the mood then was like that.
Yes.
And probably he thought that everything was coming out, and he had nowhere to go but in jail. and he probably couldn't accept that. So
That was for him.
that
It was
was
the way out.
yes,
And
and definitely it's not about the dressing down.
Yeah.
He's a general. He's a PMR. He has gone through worse dressing downs in his life. So
of course, he was embroiled in a huge military corruption scam. Now, this is a big
Yeah.
problem, and you have called for reforms in the military.
Yeah.
Do you think this is really possible? What will it take to make these serious reforms and enforce them?
it's already been made. In my prescription, in my research, you just pick the good guys. Because the AFP is a rigidly hierarchical organization wherein we really abide by the policies of the person in command. So if you put a scalawag in as a commander, then you can expect the whole organization would follow suit. But if you put the snappy officers as commanders of these organizations, then almost immediately things will change. And that's what happened. When President Aquino assumed power, he let the Board of Generals assume its role in picking the good commanders. And he did not allow political interventions or endorsements from people. So as a result, we got to have good commanders, and up to this day, we can assume, or I can honestly say that the corruption has been minimized. It cannot be, or it's not totally eradicated yet.
Yes, and you said something similar also for the new Bilibid prison scandal. You said that one of the weaknesses of the Philippine judicial system is its flawed correctional system. And that's the same thing, isn't it? That basically you're calling for reforms there too. And you said that to improve this, you have to remove the involved government officials who are responsible for the proliferation of contraband items. But these are people in power. Basically what's happening is people who are in certain positions are the ones enabling this. How do we change that, really?
I believe we're going into the right direction. I think these exposés in the Believe It really is forcing the public to reform the whole system. And right now we're redesigning, or we're constructing a new facility for them that would help. Then I'm also pushing for the integration of the whole prison management system in the
You
country.
pushed for that bill, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Senate bill.
So that way you can standardize the treatment of all the detainees or the prisoners or the convicts. So the rights will not be violated. At the same time, you can get to accomplish your objective of rehabilitating these people, because later on they will be reintegrated in society.
Right.
So it's one of the missions of the prison system. So
Yes.
yeah.
Something you've been very also an advocate of, fighting corruption and improving the system. Now, comment on one of the criticism that was put against you in 2014. The United Nationalist Alliance questioned your allegedly highly anomalous purchases of multicabs. So this is apparently funded by the PDAF from 2011 to 2013. But you, of course, refuted this.
Yes.
How did you feel at the time? I mean, do you think, were they just trying to put one over you, trying to distract
Yes,
attention?
it's a propaganda thing. They're waging a propaganda war, and I'm fighting back. These things have been cleared by the Commission and Audit, and I've explained it extensively. There's no overprice. We bought it at the standard market value, and we gave additional assistance for maintenance of these vehicles, because these are second-hand vehicles technically. So we help the barangays out by providing a one-year supply for maintenance and operation. So that explained it, and they immediately clammed up after my explanation. So
I guess it was also to the fact that at the time you refused to give up your PDAF at that time. What is your take on the PDAF?
yeah, my take is PIDAF or any government funds entrusted to you, you just have to spend it according to where it's allocated or allocated for. And definitely, you don't just put it in your pocket. I believe that is the crime, or that is the main beef against the PDAF. It's not the PDAF per se, because funds will be given out to different offices whether you call it PDAF or something else, it's about entrusting that public official with those funds. So the bottom line here is you put it to where it's for, give it to the people, or give it to the needy, or whatever it is, for as long as you don't put it in your pocket.
So you think it is constitutional, just use it for the right purposes?
Yes,
Yes.
but it's moot now because the Supreme
Yeah,
Court said
exactly.
it's
It's
unconstitutional.
unconstitutional, right? Okay, well then now let's go back to your early part of your life in the military. So you during your time in the Navy, you were in a search and rescue operation in 1998 for the MV Princess of the Orient. Tell us about that experience.
We received a distress call from the MV Princess of the Orient, or through one of the passengers there who was I think a Coast Guard official. So when the abandoned ship call was made, he immediately contacted his friends and fellow officers in the Coast Guard and in the Navy. So immediately the Navy notified us to be on standby, and we did our thing. We made preparations for that rescue mission, and we were given this caveat by the higher headquarters, wherein you can proceed or not proceed. You just it's left to the discretion of the commander, because safety of life of the ship and personnel would be paramount. When you're given that colatilla, you can opt not to go out because it's really dangerous waters back then. Precisely, one big ship capsized, but it's just this sense of duty that pushed us to go out, and we were able to rescue 31
Yeah.
people at that time. So we were the first out during that rescue mission. The other ships followed several hours after when the seas calmed a bit, but they weren't able to rescue anybody around that time.
Very difficult situation, and you also participated in other maritime law enforcement operations.
Yeah.
As a Navy officer, you helped apprehend smugglers, illegal loggers, poachers, smugglers. I mean, it's a very dangerous job. Or what for you? What is the biggest challenge in this kind of when you were seeing yourself looking at the military life, even your political life?
Well, challenges come in every day, and you just have to be prepared for it. Whether it's a physical challenge, an emotional challenge, it comes. But again, I'd like to believe that things happen for a reason, and you just need to harness that inner strength to be able to stand up and meet these challenges.
Another big challenge you faced was as a procurement officer of the Naval Training and Education Command, you reformed the procurement system, but you also faced a lot of difficulty with this.
Yes, that time the procurement system in the Navy was mired in corruption, and there was this syndicate trying to manipulate the procurement process. So when I got in, my boss fortunately was also in a reform mode. So I told him, he gave me instructions rather to clean the whole system up. So we did, and we were able to save a lot
4
of
million
money.
pesos for the government.
Yeah, for
is
the
that right?
government. Yeah. So back then in the Navy, so it was quite a lot. So in buying certain items, we managed to cut in half the cost. For example, a ream of bond paper, when they were able to procure it before at more than 200 pesos, we bought it for around 80 pesos. So that's the kind of overpricing that was happening back then. So we're able to institutionalize it then.
Right. Well, we'll be talking more about the success of Senator Trillanes and his personal life when we come back. Welcome back to the program. We are talking to Senator Antonio Trillanes. Senator, you have filed a total of over 1,000 bills in the Senate, and out of them, 41 have been passed into law. Which, for you, would be the highlights?
The highlights would be the AFP-related bills because this is the reason why I got here in the first place. So we complained about the antiquated equipment of the armed forces and the low salaries and all that. So when I was placed in this position, that's the first thing I did. I was the principal author of the AFP Modernization Law and the Salary Standardization Law 3 that more than doubled the salaries of teachers, policemen, and soldiers, and all government employees. So, and recently, we passed this bill that would increase the subsistence allowance of, again, soldiers, policemen, and the other law enforcement agencies. So, I believe we've come full circle. We're able to do what we set out to do. And now I've been branching out to the other areas of governance as well.
You have been a staunch advocate of poverty alleviation, yet you don't support the reproductive health bill. Do you think that somehow this will help, especially the poor sectors of society who have no access to reproductive health care?
I believe it won't because right now they have access already. There is already that access. And I'm only against the RH bill for certain provisions of that bill, particularly the sex education of grade 6 students. I believe at that young age, these sensitive matters should be left unto the parents because they know whether the child is mature enough to handle such a subject. And again, also the teachers may not be equipped to teach sex education. So these are the problems that weren't addressed during the deliberations for this law. And again, there are so many possible loopholes for corruption in this RH bill, RH law.
So what you're saying, there's so many loopholes, it still needs
so
to be
many
checked.
loopholes. And the thing about population control is not addressed because I asked them, why isn't ligation in the bill? Because that's the most permanent way. You can give incentives for couples or women who would voluntarily subject themselves to such a procedure, but they don't want that. They didn't want to include it because it's permanent and it will not require buying of these consumable items such as condoms and other contraceptive devices.
All right, so something to be studied further.
Yeah.
Okay, well, from there, let's go into your personal life. Let's talk about the family. You have such a busy schedule, and even at such a young age, it must have been hard to really socialize. But you met your wife in the PMA. She is also from the PMA, so Arlene Orejana. And she was one of the first women to graduate from the PMA. How is that like? Because in the beginning, you were not even allowed to really mix groups.
It was not really a challenge because we ended up being together after I graduated. So, but in terms of regulation wise, we didn't get to experience that so much. But it was a challenge when I was already deployed elsewhere. So back then you don't have text messages or cell phones yet. So it was a challenge back then.
So what was the courtship like?
The traditional stuff, you write and you call in landlines.
That's still the best, I think, yes.
I think that's, it gives a certain premium to that act of courtship. It gives a little effort, right? As opposed to just texting.
That's right, yeah. I mean, really, you get to know each other. And you married soon after her graduation, right?
Yes.
And soon, so when you had children, she decided, because she had two majors. She was also a psychology major. She was thinking to go into medicine.
Yes, but I believe she tried out PMA and
But when you had the children, she decided to really focus on raising the children, especially the time when you were away.
Yes, when I was detained, I think she left the service back in 2008, um, when it was really difficult to uh, be in Baguio at the time, and at the same time was in Camp Crame.
Yes. So for the 7 years you were detained, the children were growing up without a father. What was that like for you? And you always say now you're really making up for lost time to spend as much time as you can with the family.
Yes, it was very, very difficult. I feel for them. But fortunately, I was blessed with two happy kids who can find happiness in anything. So they were not really depressed whenever they see me in jails or in the detention facility. So we had as much fun as we could possibly have whenever we're together. But I can only imagine what they went through and what they're going through and how it affected them and how it will affect them later on. So I'm trying to make up for that,
Yeah.
and trying to oversee that they turn out to be good people in the end.
And it seems they are really wonderful children. Do you ever try to convince them or talk to them about what it's like in the military? What if they decide to go into the PMA? Because your father was actually trying to discourage you. Your father was also from the PMA.
Yes, in my case, probably I was influenced subconsciously because I really didn't see myself being a soldier. I was a laid back teenager at that time, so doing what teenagers do. So, and my father figured that I wouldn't be able to handle the hardship in the military, so he was really discouraging us. But somewhere along the way, I figured my when I was about to graduate engineering in college, I just felt it wasn't my calling. So I tried out PMA, and he eventually supported me. He was supervising my training before I entered. So that's how fathers are, and I would like to do the same to my kids. If they eventually want to pursue a specific track, I'll just be supportive for whatever it is. I'll give them all the pros and cons of this decision or that decision, but at the end of the day, I will leave it up to them.
That's right. Give them all the options. Now, what do you do to unwind? Once upon a time, you had time to cook. Your specialty is caldereta. Is that true?
A caldereta and adobo. So back then I was a mess officer in the Navy. So I got to see different techniques from our cooks in the Navy. So I got to apply them later on, and eventually I mastered a couple of dishes. So, but now, sadly, wala nang
No
ganong
time.
Yeah.
Some of your favorite authors are Robert Ludlum, Tom Clancy, Dan Brown. Of course, we know them for these action thriller kind of, I guess, plots. Can you relate somehow to them? You also like NCIS.
Yes, but I honestly, it's totally different from my inclinations because, like I said, I'm quite laid back. I would like to believe I'm a romantic kind of guy.
It's hard to believe because we all are scared of you. You look so scary. You hardly smile, but it's nice to see you
yeah.
laugh now, Senator.
But that's the thing. The public got to see me in a different light because or often when I get featured in the media, it's when I'm up against somebody. Yeah, so I'm in the middle of a fight. But privately, I'm so much different.
Your staff says it about you. You're a big joker. You love to tease them. But they also say you always talk to them. You really get to know their personal lives, and you have helped them a lot. In fact, one of your staff had a stroke, and you helped them out. So you really take time out to talk to them and even teach them about political matters.
Because we're a team, and I wouldn't be able to achieve what I plan to achieve or what I have achieved if it weren't for them. If they're not as efficient, we won't be as effective.
Yes. Another outlet for you, you like basketball and tennis. Is that right? Do you get time to play yourself, or apart from watching the sports?
Yes, I try to play as much as I can, but as a regular exercise, I walk the treadmill. That's more convenient, but I plan to play tennis more in the next couple of months.
And another thing people may not know about you, you have a great voice. You love videoke, huh?
Uh,
Some of your favorite artists, Mike Francis and Side A.
Yes.
So anong mga
those are the
favorite songs sa
classics.
videoke, Senator?
Well, I mentioned Basil Valdez and you, ano? So that's a classic. So it's safe. So ganun naman. I don't really have a great voice, but it's an outlet, di ba? Yung mga frustrations mo. So at least you can get it out.
So the big question is now, Senator, are you going to run for president during the 2016 elections?
Okay, let's just say that I declared my readiness to run for higher office, but I left it up to the Nationalista Party to decide which particular office I would run for. So I'm ready for whatever.
So in the coming, let's say in the coming, we have one last year with the administration, Aquino administration. Do you see any candidates actually that you think would really be suitable for the position?
I can rattle off a couple of names, but realistically, those who have a chance would be those who have plans to run, right? So those who would file the certificate of candidacy, then they probably have a chance. And these are Secretary Maroas, you have Mayor Duterte, Senator Miriam Defensor Santiago,
Vice President Binay.
Vice President Binay, Mayor Erap.
Yeah.
So these are the names. And Senator Alan Cayetano, and probably Senator Manny Villar. So these are names that we can expect to be playing major roles in the next couple of months.
So many colorful stories, and yours is a very, very colorful life. Thank you very much, Senator Trillanes. Great talking to you. Thanks for sharing your time with us.
Thank you, ma'am.
And that's it for our show tonight. Thank you to our guest, Senator Antonio Trillanes IV, for joining us. And thank you all for watching. I'm Mitzi Borromeo. Good night.